Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're tackling a really fascinating challenge. We're going to take a massive, honestly pretty messy healthcare dataset and transform it from raw patient records into a totally polished, professional Power BI dashboard. We're going to distill some top-tier expert tutorial advice into a tight, highly actionable workflow that you can take and apply immediately to your own data projects.
But right off the bat, we have to ask the big question. How exactly do you tackle a massive, completely unfamiliar healthcare dataset? Let's be real for a second. Opening up a file and just staring at tens of thousands of blank rows and columns can be seriously intimidating. Like, where do you even begin? Well, don't worry, there is a very clear step-by-step method to conquer it, and that is exactly what we're going to walk through today.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. Setup and data prep, high-level versus detailed views, best practices for visuals, navigation and drill-throughs, utilizing quick measures, and finally, submitting your project. Starting off with Section 1, Setup and Data Prep.
All right, so when you load unfamiliar data, here is a huge Power Query pro tip. Head straight to the View ribbon and enable Column Quality. This instantly gives you a high-level snapshot of valid values, errors, or any empty fields. But here's the real insider secret. Switch your column profile setting at the very bottom from the default first 1,000 rows to the entire dataset. The first 1,000 rows might actually look perfectly clean, but scanning the whole dataset reveals the true distribution, which lets you clean and categorize everything accurately. For instance, scanning the profile on this particular healthcare dataset reveals some huge numbers. We're talking 55,000 unique patient IDs and roughly 40,000 distinct doctors. This immediately tells us a crucial piece of the puzzle. Every single patient entry is unique, and with 40,000 doctors, we absolutely cannot just cram those into a basic visual. We have to be strategic about this.
Which brings us nicely to Section 2, High-Level versus Detailed Views.
Take a look at this contrast, because you always got to ask yourself, who is actually looking at this dashboard? If you're presenting to the board of directors, they are generally focused on the money, right? They want high-level billing amounts and broad, generalized timelines. But if you're presenting to department doctors or the hospital staff on the floor, it's a whole different ballgame. They need granular, detailed analysis on individual patients, average care times, and specific medical conditions. It's actually a really great idea to mix and match both of these approaches across different pages of your report.
Moving right along to Section 3, Best Practices for Visuals.
Seriously, just imagine this for a second. What happens if you take those 44,000 distinct doctors and just drag them directly into a donut chart? It's a super common beginner mistake. You basically end up creating this never-ending, completely unreadable wheel of tiny data points that you can just spin forever. It literally defeats the entire purpose of having a visual in the first place. To avoid that exact disaster, you want to stick to these golden rules for donut charts. First, fiercely limit your categories to just a handful. Second, ensure your values are either all positive or all negative. Mixing them up completely destroys the visual proportions of the chart. And finally, keep those naming conventions short and sweet so you don't crowd the visual space. Now, this brilliantly illustrates a perfect use case for a donut chart, a simple patient gender breakdown. We have a very small number of clear categories: female, male, and non-binary. It's clean, it's visually balanced, and boom, it is instantly understandable the very second the user glances at it. Okay, want to make that chart look incredibly polished? Here's a neat technical trick: base 64 encoding. Sounds complicated, but it essentially just means taking a whole image and encoding it into a massive string of text. Why would we do this? Because you can take that text string, paste it directly into your visual formatting options, and embed custom icons right onto your donut chart slices. It's fantastic because you no longer have to rely on external SharePoint or OneDrive URLs that might suddenly break or have weird permission issues. A real game changer for sure.
Let's shift gears to Section 4, Navigation and Drill-Throughs. Drill-throughs are a fantastic solution for letting users navigate deep into your data, but you absolutely must pay attention to the Keep All Filters toggle. If you keep this enabled, it passes the global page context from one page to the next. Think of it like packing a suitcase of filters. So if a user filters the first page to only show hospitals in California and then drills through on a specific blood type, that California filter travels right along with them. If you disable the toggle, only the specific blood type they clicked on gets passed through. Understanding how this works completely dictates how your users experience the data.
And remember that massive list of 40,000 doctors we talked about? Yeah. Don't just drop a giant standard list on the page.
Save some valuable screen space by converting that slicer to a drop-down, click the little ellipses at the top right, and enable the search function. Suddenly, an overwhelming scroll becomes a lightning-fast query.
All right, Section 5. Utilizing quick measures. Let's see how this all builds an incredible financial narrative. Here, we're looking at month-over-month billing amounts, tracking variations based on the admission date. A timeline is basically a mandatory visual when you're working with healthcare data because your stakeholders absolutely need to see those chronological variations and financial trends clearly.
But hey, calculating that month-over-month variance can be a bit tricky, right? Pro tip: use Power BI's built-in quick measures for time intelligence. Instead of spending hours writing complex DAX formulas from scratch, the system just generates the month-over-month change for you. You can even map this new variance metric to a secondary axis, make the actual line invisible, and just use red and green data labels to highlight the percentage increases and decreases. It saves massive time and looks incredibly professional.
Here's another one of my absolute favorite visual hacks. Sometimes you graph a metric, say average care time, and the numbers are just so close together that the chart ends up looking like a boring flat line. If that happens, change your primary axis setting to a floating zero line. This rescales the chart based entirely on the minimum and maximum values in your specific data, which magically exaggerates those subtle ups and downs and makes the actual trends visible to the user.
And finally, Section 6, submitting your project.
So, the absolutely crucial point here is 2 to 3 pages. That is the ultimate sweet spot for a comprehensive report. Please do not submit 10 messy pages of disjointed visuals, and definitely don't try to cram 50 tiny graphs onto a single page. Break the information up logically. Keep it short, keep it concise, and make it beautifully formatted.
You know, this reminds me why participating in these dataset challenges is just so important. In your day job, you have to be extremely precise, and you obviously cannot share sensitive company data publicly. This challenge is a true learning environment. It's exactly how you build a real-world portfolio, try out fun new techniques without any fear of breaking a production dashboard, and showcase your awesome skills to the community.
We have covered an incredible amount of ground today, from evaluating column quality on massive datasets all the way to designing custom audience-specific drill-throughs. So I want to leave you with this final thought to chew on. Which new Power BI visualization technique will you tackle in your portfolio first? Pick one, download a dataset, and just start experimenting. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I seriously can't wait to see what you build.